the gatekeepers. Because in any social scene, there are people who are the entrance way to that group, and they're often people who are very social butterflies. They enjoy connecting people, they're outgoing, they're open, right? And they understand the scene or the group that they're working within. And that's what I've done multiple times in my life. When I first moved to Melbourne with my band, we were a nobody band. We had a VHS tape of some grainy footage of us playing in some local pubs. We had a shitty demo CD, and we had this A3 paper that I'd printed all the articles from the little tiny newspapers that said, oh, decent funk band on their way up in the local scene. And that was our proof. I put this into a folder, and that was our press kit. And so when we first arrived to Melbourne, we'd moved the band there, all living out in the suburbs in a shitty house together, trying to make it. And we'd go around to all the bars, and I'd hand it to usually it was the guy who poured the beers and booked the bands. And we're like, oh yeah, we're a band, we moved from Canberra, and you know, give us a shot. And more than once, they literally just dropped it in the bin as you know, in front of me. And when they didn't, they put it in a pile of 30 other demo CDs from every other wannabe band. And we just couldn't get a gig. And so I was really starting to lose it, trying to think, okay, how are we going to do this? I need to somehow differentiate myself from everyone else out there who's trying to do this. And so I thought, well, what's the band that is most like us stylistically, and it is the top of the scene? It was a cool band at the time called Brown Hornet. They were lots of fun. And I found out that their manager also worked as a barman at the local bar. I found out roughly when he worked, a little bit stalkerish, but it was all right. I went in on a Tuesday afternoon once, and I introduced myself, and I said, hey man, listen, you don't know me, but I've got a band, we're from Canberra, we're pretty cool. I know that doesn't mean anything to you right now, but I'm really struggling trying to figure out the music scene here. And what I would love to do is buy you lunch and sit down with you for an hour and pick your brains on how this works here. Would that be cool? So what I did is I came in and I offered something and asked for something at the same time. And it's interesting, I'm now in that position of that bar manager. Today I get asked all the time, guys just write me on Facebook and they just say, there's this one girl, and then they launch into asking me for free seduction advice. Yeah? Or they say, I want to be a dating coach. How do I sign up? And I'm like, Jesus, dudes, like to understand that if you want to approach someone who is in an area much further along than you are, you're going to have to offer something straight away because they don't need you. And that was what I understood with that guy, is like, okay, I've got to offer him something. What have I got is being friendly and lunch. Those were the currencies that I had to offer at the time. And he said, forget about fucking lunch, let's just buy me some beers and we'll have a chat. If you want to bring some beers over, I live around the corner, I'll come around after my shift. Which, thinking back now, was a bit of a dodgy offer, actually. Bring some drinks over, young boy, and we'll talk. But he was a nice man, he was a gentleman. And so I did, and no, just bring some alcohol over and we'll talk. So I spent the last 20 bucks I had, bought a six-pack, and I don't even like beer, but I knew I'd have to drink it. Went around to this guy's house, sat down, and I didn't just go, here's your beer, all right, so I'm ready. I traded on the human currency of actually chatting and talking to him and figuring out what was going on in his life and what was of interest to him, and here's a beer. And then I said, so anyway, can you tell me about, like, what's the best way to get shows in town? And he said, all right, man, you're doing it all wrong. You can't just fucking drop demos. And he explained basically what needed to be done. And then he said, anyway, so do you have a CD of your band here? I said, well, actually, just so happens that I do have one here. Put it on, he listened, he said, yeah, it's not bad. Tell you what are you doing next Friday? I said, anything you want. And he said, well, if your band's free, I'm like, we're free. Then do you want to support Brown Hornet? I went, fuck yes. Right? And so it was from that position that we got our first gig, straight from zero to supporting the best band of that type in the local scene. And from there, and he said, very importantly, he said, make sure you bring a few people down. You know, the bar, really, it's really important to the bar that you've got people drinking there. So I made sure, and my band made sure, that we got every single person we knew in that city, begged them and just blackmailed them or whatever we had to do to get them to come to that show. We managed to bring 40 people along, which meant the bar was happy, the room was full, we played a good show, and so we had then balanced this initial debt, And so that guy then said, and the venue went, okay, those guys, we can bank on them. Yeah, let's get them back. I asked, I offered, I traded, and then we collaborated, and as a result, trust was built, and a leg up was started, right? This is a really important thing to understand. When I met Sasha at that first 21 convention, he was chatting and he said, where are you staying? And I said, oh, out in fuck knows where. And he said, well, why don't you just come and, he said like this, why don't you just come and stay on my fucking couch? And I said, okay, I'll come. And so I went and grabbed my bags because he lived right in the center, and I came and stayed on his couch. And we stayed up all night chatting and getting to know each other really well. And then the next morning I said, is there a good place for breakfast around here? He said, yeah. Took him down and I bought him breakfast, as all gentlemen should in the morning. All right? And he said, what, you don't have to. And I said, no, you saved me 100 pounds last night. I'm just going to buy you breakfast. And that was, again, because by that time, I had this implanted as part of the way that I do things in life, right? I ask, whenever I want something, if there's somebody that I need something from, I go and I ask them. And then I make sure, whether or not it's immediately or whether it's soon, that I balance that by giving something back to them, something that is of value to them. Because in the ideal situation, you want to be like the Godfather, which is where you've got heaps of a currency that people find really valuable that's really cheap for you to give away, right? So, because then you have the most leverage in life. If you have lots of something that everyone wants, it doesn't cost you much to give it away and it's valuable to other people, that means you can afford to take chances on all sorts of people by throwing these pennies out and seeing when people give stuff back in return. And all of you have those currencies now, whether or not you understand it or not, because simple stuff like a smile, like a clear look in the eye and a proper handshake, from asking somebody, for the difference between asking somebody how you been to tell me what's going on for you lately and actually listening, that's real currency. People care about that. It makes a difference because now they feel significant, they feel heard, they feel understood. And then there's all sorts of other ones. Advice. My entire livelihood is based around a currency that is really cheap for me to give away, which is advice on how to get women, because I can keep ranting and spewing it out indefinitely, and people pay me many thousands of dollars to learn it because it's incredibly valuable to them. And so for the guys that are trying to step out of their small town or move away from a job that they hate, or move into social circles which are more dynamic, where there's more interesting things happening, where there's pretty girls and fun parties and all that stuff happening, you need to understand that you're going to have to trade your way up to it. A couple of years ago, 2 Austrian young guys, 22-year-old guys, contacted me because somewhere on my website, I completely forgotten, we had a section of like employment, the natural lifestyles employment. And we'd put on there that we were looking for media guys, camera guys and editors. And I'd forgotten about this, and I got this email from these guys saying that, hello, my name is Dominic and Alex, and we are 2 Austrians, and we are very efficient, and we would like to come and work for you. We are good with cameras and web design and so on. And they made an offer to me. And I ignored them, not because I'm nasty, just because I usually ignore everyone the first time they contact me. Because I know that mostly they don't ever contact again. They don't want it bad enough. If a guy applies to become a dating coach with me, all I say is, send me 3 articles that you've written about, or you write 3 articles about your philosophies, and send me 3 videos of you talking to girls. And in all the years that I've been doing this, only one guy has ever done that, Tony Solo, and that's why he's a coach. Right? Because I test them to see, okay, what currency have you got to give to me, and do you actually really care and really want this? So I ignored these guys for a while, and then one day we realized that we really needed some photos right now. And we needed a photo shoot done. We were living at Budapest at the time, and then I went, oh, there's those guys in Austria who keep bothering me. And so I wrote to them, I said, can you be in Budapest on Saturday? We need to do a photo shoot. So you would have to book us a studio. We don't have any cameras. Bring some cameras, and that's it. And they made it happen. These guys rocked up. So I came from Vienna, arrived in Budapest, went and did this photo shoot. It was good. We looked afterwards. I was like, okay, these guys did what they say they would do, and they're competent at their job, and they're fun and interesting guys to be around. Okay, cool. Now you're interns. 2 years later, those guys are traveling around the world with us, flying drones over New York City, getting to hang around with arguably the best seduction crew that ever walked the earth, and having a fucking amazing lifestyle. And it was only a month or two ago that one of them admitted to me that when they came to Budapest, they had never done a studio photo shoot before. When they said they were photographers, they were Instagram photographers. Yeah, they were guys who took some photos of each other in the park doing these kinds of things. Yeah, they'd never done that, right? But they had the balls and the audacity to like pitch something to somebody that they weren't quite ready for, but to pull it off. Because then he said that as soon as I said yes, but next Saturday, they spent that week like researching on the internet and like putting a like butcher's paper on the wall and trying to figure out how to do a studio photo shoot, and made it happen enough to fool us, right? So at the end of it, we're like, yeah, it's pretty good. These guys, good photographers. And since then, they've become excellent photographers, amazing at the skill of in-field photography, which is a really difficult skill of being able to film from the hip whilst looking at your phone to try and capture seduction in-field, and great at flying drones, and they're awesome. Now we're creating really amazing content. So it's not, once again, it's these were the guys that were people. They were guys that had audacity and humility and who offered something to somebody who didn't need them, and as a result, got to jump in way up the top of where they, like the alternative of being 22 and trying to figure out all of the entrepreneurship stuff that I have figured out, to be able to figure out all of the seduction stuff that this crew has, would literally have taken a decade. And instead, they get to supercharge that right to the top. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be a guy who's living outside of the matrix and is unplugged from the general status quo, you don't have to be the boss and you don't have to do it alone. Right? That's something that is important to note. That you can, if you can jump in particularly on something that's on its way up, right? A group of people or a business or a social crew that is on the up, that's a really good place to get in on it. Because once they've made it, then it's often harder to jump in. But to move in on a group that is coalescing, that's a startup, that's figuring out its role, and that is creating success as a point where it's creating income or it's creating social success, then you don't have to do it all alone. If you come in and go, here's what I've got to offer, and here's what I want, then you can jump multiple levels in a short amount of time. Nice guys offer and don't ask for anything in return. They hope they're going to get something in return. Arseholes take and don't offer anything in return. And Liam's going to talk more about that in his speech. The slash and burn of like being someone who's charming and then getting stuff out of people and then moving on. I could have done that with Sasha that night. Like, yeah, free night on the couch. Fuck you, buddy. I'm out of here. Yeah. Instead, because I mean, it's not that he would have cared either way about the breakfast, but because I bought him breakfast and then we both did an interview for each other straight away to put on each other's channels. And then at that time, I was having trouble filling the Euro tour. And then he's like, well, I want to come on that. And Steve said, I want to come on that. And so they pulled together a student or two and jumped on with me and then made that work for me and for them. This meant that friendships were forged very, very fast. Right? This is the way to create cultures and tribes of men very fast that have extreme loyalty to each other, that have each other's back at every turn, is through this seductive economy. Another thing that's important to note when you're starting to look at, okay, I want to start to create a culture, create a group of men that is proactive, that is going out to meet girls or to create a lifestyle that's interesting, is the ideal group is like the X-Men. It has multiple characters in it. Because if you're hanging around just the same type of people, even if they're really proactive and interesting people, nice people or whatever, if they are all introverted or analytical thinkers, right, if they're all in one sphere of work, then you are fairly limited by what you know, who you know, right? And we see this. Most groups are fairly homogenous. They're the same race, the same age, the same work that they're doing, similar kinds of temperaments. The groups that I have built and moved into and hung out with over the last 10 years have all sorts of different characters. And an ideal tribe of men includes